Welcome to the future. Technologies and innovations that sculpt our industry.
This episode brought to you by Johnson Controls and their redesigned residential HVAC portfolio utilizing R454B. Learn more at johnsoncontrols.com.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC podcast. So today we're spending some time with David Budzinski, the president of global products at Johnson Controls. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We're very excited to talk to our OEMs about the transitions that we're seeing in equipment. So by now, hopefully everyone is familiar with the technology transition as well as our refrigerant transitions. So we're going to see a variety of new things in our product lines. And so we're here to spend some time talking about new product lines from Johnson Controls. So when we start talking about the A2L transition, could you give us some specific features or enhancements about the new product lines and how we're going to see different efficiencies and serviceability in new equipment?
Of course. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the new portfolios that we have recently launched and are going to continuing to be launching here through the rest of the calendar year in 2024. So specifically in our residential HVAC portfolio, we've spent a lot of time in the last multiple years refreshing our portfolio based on, new regulation changes.
Yes.
So if you look at the transition we did in 2023 with the DOE specific, we really raised our energy efficiency standards to essentially the SEER 2 rating for the North America markets. As we head into 2024 and up to 2025, we're obviously focusing on really two types of portfolio refreshes. One is largely on the move to a low GWP refrigerant. So Johnson Controls has selected R454B as our new refrigerant for our residential and light commercial HVAC portfolio. And simultaneously, we're also taking the opportunity to really focus on not just the transition to new low GWP refrigerants, but also focusing on feature enhancements that really help our contractors. We've gotten a lot of feedback and done a significant amount of voice of customer relative to things that not only improve the performance of the unit for homeowners, relative to things like improving the energy efficiency in their homes and lowering their electric utility bills, but also things that are important for our contractor base around serviceability of the units, and most importantly, on decreasing the amount of time it takes for the units to be installed.
Oh, nice.
So things like placement of where the valves are located to, call it charging and, charging specifics around the amount of charge in the unit that help essentially get our contractors in and out in a much faster and more efficient way so that they can complete more installs in one day than they have with some of our previous generation product or some of the product of our competitors. So we've done a significant amount of teardown analysis between our units and those of our peers in the industry so that we could really understand what's most important for our contractors and what's most important for our end users. And we've incorporated, tens and 20s of different types of features and things in each of the models that are coming out in our new generation products that we know are going to be very, very much welcome for our contractors and consumers alike.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to move into an age of new generations of technologies. As the technological advancement of our age advances, it's inevitable that we're going to see more advanced technologies in our equipment. And I love it. I'm a controls and automations guy, so I think it's fantastic that we're starting to get a little bit more advanced in our residential sector, as we should. And so we're very grateful that Johnson Controls is doing this. When we look at refrigerants, we're primarily going to see two refrigerants in the residential and light commercial sector, R32 and R454B. Were there some determining factors for Johnson Controls going with R454B over R32?
So we're actually going to use both.
Uh-huh.
So we're using R454B in our residential ducted portfolio, and we're using R32 in our ductless portfolio.
Okay.
And the reason we chose R454B in our residential ducted and light commercial ducted portfolio, I should say, was really because there's a couple of reasons. One is it had a lower GWP number.
Yes.
And so as we work really closely with the EPA in, what the next lowering threshold will be for greenhouse gases, we wanted to stay ahead of the game. And we wanted to make sure that, when contractors and homeowners were putting in our new generation portfolio, that as well as our distributors, frankly, that there's a healthy level of inventory and product going out to the consumers that essentially would be ahead of the game if and when, I should say, the EPA takes their next step down. So very, very important for us to really be ahead and make sure that we have a sustainable path, not just for the environment, but for us from a product line perspective as well. And most of our peer sets have followed that suit relative to choosing 454B. On the ductless side of the house for North America, we moved to R32. That was largely being driven by most of our Asia-based populations, where our peer sets that are largely based in Asia have chosen to go to R32. It's a little bit of an easier drop-in from R410A to go to that. And so we know that there's another change that's going to need to happen. But because of how large our overall installed base is in Asia, as well as how much product we have from the ductless side going to Asia, it was more driven by the market demand to move to R32. And so we wanted to make sure that we're in line, not just with our installers and contractors overseas outside of the domestic United States, but also with our distributors and the regulatory bodies outside of North America. So that's the reason we went to R32 for the ductless portfolio, and we chose to go to R454B for the North America portfolio.
No, I appreciate you explaining that. It makes a lot of sense. Now, when we start talking about both refrigerants, R32 and R454B, those are both A2L classified refrigerants. And we spent a lot of time here at ESCO talking about the different ASHRAE flammability classifications. And A2L really doesn't have much flammability to it. A lot of people don't realize that even R410A and all refrigerants have a flammability to it. Just so significantly low that we didn't utilize any type of refrigerant leak detection in the past for A1s. But industry-wide, we're going to start utilizing some refrigerant leak detection, and it really kind of comes down to the installation, the design, and the refrigerant charge. So some systems are going to see some refrigerant leak detection. And can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to see? What kind of product lines will we be utilizing that in?
So I think it's important to understand, right, that A2Ls are mildly flammable, right? And not necessarily, there's a bit of an education that still needs to happen relative to, understanding the flammability itself of these types of A2Ls. And also as well as when we move to naturals. So I think there's a transition that's going to be happening here over the next decade, I would say, as we continue to advance as an industry here. And so we are going to start to see, obviously, safety precautions on the units themselves relative to the leak detection sensors that we have. All of our new generation product line has the leak detection sensing, both in our ducted as well as ductless technologies.
Oh, wow.
So all of that's going to be already installed within the unit itself. And so I think it gives consumers essentially a sense of comfort to know that if there is a leak, right, it will be detected by the sensing technologies that we're embedding within the mechanical equipment itself, and obviously will generate the necessary shutoff precautions to make sure that there's no issue relative to, from a safety perspective in the home or the commercial space. So I think it's very, very important for us. We're also spending a lot of time educating not just our contractor base, but also our distributors, and to a certain extent, our end users on quite the flammability that is there, and really how flammable it really is versus is not. So,
Sure.
Frequently we have quite a bit of demonstrations on the fact that A2Ls are not quite as flammable as people think they are. So the word mildly is very important. And so I think it really comes down to, still making sure we have the appropriate level of safety precautions in the detection systems, but we're not necessarily over pivoting to something as flammable as, say, per se propane, right? Which is a lot more flammable. So we're doing that education continuously, and all of our new lines have the appropriate amount of detection equipment in it to make sure and integrating that into making sure the units are safe for contractors and homeowners alike.
Yeah, I would say you've actually went above and beyond the expectations. When we start talking about M1 classifications for A2L refrigerants, we're talking around 4.1 pounds or so for R454B before we start requiring mitigation. So the fact that you're going to be implementing those into ductless systems for a product line, that's just showing that you're stepping up that expectation and exceeding what those industry standards are going to be. So that's really cool. I'm glad to see that. Some manufacturers have not, and I've been wondering, who is going to be able to really step up that bar and set a new standard across the entire product line. So thank you very much for doing that. That's a very important move in the industry, and I'm glad to see that. It's a good.
I think we're really integrating that with some of our digital technology. So if you think about in our ductless systems, we have for both our VRF technologies, we have AirCloud Pro, which is our digital connectivity technology that not only helps installers to determine the right amount of refrigerant charge, but make sure that the installation is up to speed. We're integrating that sensing technologies into that digital platform. That's helping our contractors guide them through our new generation R32 technologies. And then we also have our AirCloud Home, which is more consumer-based, but that's really more for our ductless rack platforms and making sure that they are, up to speed and can control and do some command and control of the units themselves. So all available in our new generation products, both from a rack pack and our new generation top flow VRF. So pretty excited about those coming out.
Yeah, that's a lot of really good technology into a consumer market that hasn't really been given those tools. Now that homeowners are starting to utilize applications for monitoring refrigerators and appliances, water conditions in their home, they're actually being more aware of their built environment. And so being able to have a connected system where they have a little bit more interface with their comfort cooling and comfort heating products is a really nice add-on. One of the things that we do get questions about when we start talking about A2L equipment, is there any common identifiers with your new product lines that will be utilizing A2L refrigerants?
Yeah, so we're making sure that all of the appropriate equipment we have that is A2L. So there's a couple things. Obviously, we're following the safety regulations and all of the necessary regulatory protocols on labeling the units, making sure that they're very clearly identifiable when it comes to which ones have our legacy refrigerant as well as our new A2L refrigerants. So those units will have the appropriate, call it signage and labeling attached to the units themselves. But also one very easily identifiable will be, we've launched a brand new color scheme for our residential equipment. And so we're very excited that our entire residential line is absolutely refreshed, not just from the refrigerant and all the feature sets that I mentioned earlier, really focused around ease of install and, call it making sure that, we have mechanical pressure switches and clarified wiring diagrams and simplified wiring. And as I mentioned, valve placements and all these different features we put into our residential equipment, but also making sure that they look modern and refreshed for the consumers themselves. And so we're going to have a brand new color palette for our new lines of residential equipment. So you will be able to easily identify that way, as well as with the appropriate labeling that we have coming out.
Now, do we have an anticipation of when we're going to start seeing the residential line of A2L equipment?
Yeah, so we've released most of our new residential line already to be able to be ordered for sale through our distribution partners. And so the factories themselves are ready to go. And so production's actually starting this month for our new A2Ls in all of our residential and light commercial factories. So we're absolutely ready to go. We actually pulled in the launch of these new A2Ls because Originally, there was a little bit of a later schedule for the launches so that our channel partners could liquidate some of the legacy refrigerant inventory that they had. But with some, call it uncertainty relative to sell-through and other things, we wanted our distributors to really be equipped and be ready significantly ahead of the January 1st, 2025 changeover. So we've accelerated our launch schedule by about 3 months. And so we're really excited to be one of the first to launch the A2L equipment into the market for our partners, our contractors, and of course for consumers that want to be sustainable and have a low GWP refrigerant system in their homes.
I hear a lot of investment. Everything that I hear from you is how much Johnson Controls has invested into the industry as a whole. I've been to a lot of our equipment manufacturers, and the amount of time that it takes to retool a facility, the engineering that is involved, like you're talking about just going through wiring diagrams and changing color schemes and re-engineering, that is a huge investment from a manufacturer to be ahead of the January 1st, 2025 schedule. That's a lot for a manufacturer to do and to be able to release an entire product line. So how was Johnson Controls able to launch this entire product line way ahead of schedule? Because there's going to be a lot of manufacturers that are going to be tugging at the shirt tails because they're months and months and months behind Johnson Controls.
So I think it comes down to our commitment to our partners and to our contractors, right? As we look at, the commitment into the residential and light commercial HVAC businesses and really where the biggest impact of the regulatory transition is happening, Johnson Controls has been at the forefront of making sure that we're working very closely with our distribution partners and our installer contractors for them to be ready. And so what that means is that requires us to be significantly ahead of that timeline relative to the investments in engineering. So we've dramatically increased the amount of engineering talent that we have from a headcount perspective. We've invested in new labs. So we've expanded our labs in our Wichita, Kansas residential facility and our Norman, Oklahoma commercial facility. And so we've been out retrofitting all of our factories to be, call it A2L production ready, investing in new refrigerant charging systems, refreshing a lot of our assembly lines. We've actually expanded our commercial HVAC facility in Norman, Oklahoma, and doubled the amount of output we have from that plant in order to keep up with the demand, while simultaneously being able to really retrofit some of our legacy assembly lines to be ready for A2L. And, most importantly, and something we're really committed to around, decarbonization and in general sustainability efforts, we're really, really proud to have gotten a grant from the government of the U.S. in order to expand our Wichita facility on the production of residential heat pumps.
Nice.
So something really, really important. And the team is incredibly busy working on new production lines, which several of which are underway, one of which has just recently started rolling units off the line here. And so we're adding more heat pump lines in the United States, so designed, engineered, and manufactured in the U.S., and we're really, really proud of that. And we're going to continue to make that investment in the factory and add more and more domestic heat pump capability for our Wichita, Kansas facility here.
Yeah, I do believe that is the future of HVAC, that we're going to be leaning heavily on heat pump technology. I'm actually working on a curriculum right now for cold climate heat pump installations and best practices from a educator perspective, doing introductory into what the next generations of equipment are going to look like, because now we're starting to utilize technology to expand the capability of our heat pumps. And I really look forward to see some of these new products that are coming out. I know you've been very active in the Cold Climate Heat Pump Challenge and really pushing equipment to new levels of not just efficiency, but comfort and capability and serviceability. So the new products are really starting to head into a nice direction for the contractor and for the installation service technicians.
Yeah, and we're really proud to be a part of the DOE's Cold Climate Heat Pump Challenge on the residential side. amongst some of our peer sets in the industry. And so our unit has surpassed kind of the testing standards that we had set for ourselves. And so we're really proud of that. And the team's worked very hard to get there. And we're also, one of the pioneers as well with the DOE on the commercial side for our rooftops. And so we've been working very, very closely to launch, the cold climate heat pump for our rooftop segment. Ooh. And so Johnson Controls is really proud to be a leader in that space as well.
Excellent. All right. That is a lot of great information. Any other topics you'd like to cover before we hop out of here?
No, I would say we're really excited to be, a leader in the industry relative to our HVAC segment at Johnson Controls. We've been making a lot of investments around really the importance of, low GWP refrigerants and making sure that we have really strong engineering capabilities and our factories are ready and our labs are ready. But also we're working really, really closely with our distribution partners and our training centers around the world to make sure that we have the availability of education and communication to our contractor base. And so we see that as something that is so incredibly important, is to make sure that our contractors feel confident in working with Johnson Controls and our residential and commercial HVAC products. So we're doing a lot of efforts there, both directly with our partners, but also through our distributors and other types of avenues to make sure that we're ready for this transition, where our partners are comfortable and feel, call it confident in making sure that we're step by step with them so that we can make the transition fluid and continue to provide, best in class products for homeowners and commercial building owners alike.
Excellent. So for anyone wanting to follow up with this conversation and learn more about Johnson Controls, resources for education, as well as new product lines, what is a good landing place for them to go to?
So we'll provide you with the right Johnson Controls address from an IP perspective, and you can definitely check us out at www.johnsoncontrols.com. And there we do have learning resources for contractors, specifically in the residential space, but also for commercial. We also have a residential light commercial training academy that's available for contractors to sign up for, and we'll get you these details to post along with the podcast.
All right. David Budzinski, President of Global Products, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Have a great day.